This is episode 92 of the EdTech Takeout from Grantwood AEA. My name's Jonathan Wiley, and this is the point in the podcast where I like to say, Bonjour, midi, ça va bien?
Oh, no, and then I just say, hey.
I'm just warming up for our guest today.
That's right, I know.
Yeah.
Feeling a little fish out of water today. Me, anyway.
We're going very European on the podcast today, or we will be shortly.
That's right. Well, it's kind of a longer episode, so should we cut to the chase, man?
We probably should, yeah. We got lots to talk about today.
Yeah, let's do it.
So first, in news and follow-up, I think in previous episodes we've talked about Pixlr as an online photo editing tool. They have come out with the Pixlr for Education pack, which is some extra bonuses, extra nuggets, if you will, for teachers and students. You have full access to their Pixlr X and Pixlr E tools. You've got more editing tools. You've got a Google Classroom integration coming soon. Right. You get like 7,000 extra icons and stickers. You get
7,000? Did you say 7,000?
I know.
Go big or go home.
And it's also ad-free. So, it's just a nice little extra bonus. I thought I'd throw it in there. It appeared in my inbox recently. You do have to, apply and go through a process to get approved, but we just want to make sure that the right people are getting all the extra goodies.
Right.
If you're looking for an online photo editor, you need more than what comes on your Chromebook, then Pixlr have some really great tools to look at. Nice.
Well, I added this link in about, and I'm still like trying to wrap my brain around what's happening here, but so Flipgrid has updated their sharing permissions for groups and topics. So if in the past you've had something that was listed under public.
Yes.
It is no longer public. And so you might have issues, and this goes to past ones, which I think is the tricky thing, is that now you need to go back and look at those permissions because, am I understanding this correctly? There are no public permissions anymore.
I saw you added this to the doc, and I was just glad that you were the one that was going to be explaining it.
So from my understanding, I mean,
the
reading I'm doing is that you have to either have it so that students can sign in with an email address, students can sign in with a username, or have access to it through Google Classroom. And I guess I don't know. I don't know if that's just a link within Google Classroom and it'll take them directly there, and then they will not have to log in because there's a Google authentication that happens between those two. Still or whatever, but if you have something that's public, it's not public anymore. So if you might just need to go back in. So I think there's a prompt underneath your any of those groups or topics that may have been public before, and it might say something like your group is set to public and needs to be updated, and then there'll be a link to show you how to do that, which I believe is also the link that we have in the show notes.
And so I think for a lot of teachers, this is probably not a huge deal, but
agreed.
If you do the kind of job that Mindy and I do, or you're an instructional coach in your building, and you've got all these boards, and you just want to get people on without the hassle of signing in and passwords and all the rest,
what a pain.
Yeah. It is a pain, for sure.
And when things like this happen, I always wonder, like, did something else happen? Are they in lockdown because something happened and we don't know that something? Yeah, what happened? Why are we doing this now? So just to be aware, because I don't know that I saw this like pop into my inbox or anything. Are you the one that first mentioned it? Or I don't know. It was Amber, right? She went in and was like, is there just no public permission? So I don't think any of us were aware of it until you go in there. So just so you know.
I guess it's possible you may have a board or two that you wanted, like, I don't know, grandparents or parents to go and post on and things like that.
Right.
Flipgrid is tightening things up a little bit. Let's just leave it at that.
That's right. Yep.
New layout and features are coming to Google Meet. in the very near future. Next month, as we record in May, you'll see new things. So I included a link to a friend of the show, Eric Kurtz, who put a nice little
Eric.
blog post together.
He's always on the blog post, or always on the podcast.
He's always on the
One way
podcast
or
somewhere. Yeah, we weren't joking when we told him that. He put together a nice little blog post that went over the main things that are changing, and he's added another video to his Google Meet series that shows some of those updates.
Nice.
But basically, they're moving all the controls down to the bottom bar.
Okay.
At the bottom there. So you had controls at the bottom, but up in the top right-hand corner was your participant list and your administrator tools and stuff. That's all going down to the bottom now.
Okay.
You're getting more choice over your layout. Previously you had that little a big black box that said, you're presenting to everyone, that took up 2/3 of the screen. It's this is a waste of space.
Yeah, right.
That's going to be going away. You'll actually be able to see what you're presenting. And if you want, you can minimize it and pin it so it's just a tile among all the other people on the call.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So you'll be able to see much more of your students while you're presenting, basically, is the big thing there.
Yeah.
And you also got some options to hide yourself or, float yourself on top of the existing grid layout.
Yeah, it says up to 49 tiles at a time. So it'll be nice to be. That's what the one thing I always feel about with Google Meet is, if you're talking to a group of people, it is kind of nice to be able to see their faces as opposed to just talking to your presentation screen. So it's a good upgrade, I think. Good job, Google Meet. You did it.
Yay. And maybe just as a quick addendum before we jump into our guest here, there were some new Apple products released since the last time we were on air. So I thought I'd ask Mindy if she's getting any new stuff.
I am not. I don't think so. I guess I don't know. I got rid of my Apple Watch.
Is there anything?
Yeah, I haven't had my Apple Watch for years now.
I feel like I haven't seen you for years.
Yeah, I don't think I've had it for probably three years.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it kind of puts out, and Steve was like, I'll get you another one for Mother's Day or something. I was like, I actually have really enjoyed not having it on my wrist. So, yeah, I never replaced it. So what's new? Tell me, because I did not pay attention to this.
So there's a new iPad Pro. So a new iPad at the top of the line, expensive ones, the $800 and I think they're $1,200 or something, depending on which screen size you get.
Goodness gracious.
The big change, I guess, with them is that the iPads now have the same processor as the MacBooks.
What?
Yes, they have the same, processor, the same CPU. It's called an M1 chip. They're putting the same computing brain in the iPad that they're putting in the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro and the iMac and the Mac Mini. They all use the same chips now. So that's kind of interesting. So we'll see where that goes. It is kind of
interesting. Huh.
I don't know if it needs to be that powerful yet with the things that it can do, but maybe they're going to change up the software and make it more powerful and give it more things to do. There are new iMacs. I know we have iMacs in some schools, but these ones are almost impossibly thin. They're 11 millimeters thin or something like that.
What?
And they come in 6 different colors now. So fresh colors. And then we have AirTags, which are kind of like tile trackers that you can use to stick on your stuff and find it when you lose your keys or your bag or stuff
your
like
children.
That.
Yes, right.
Mm-hmm.
Annie, just put this in your back pocket, sweetie.
There you go.
You
could put one on your dog tag or your dog's collar or something like that. And
it's an expensive dog tag, but whatever.
Yeah. But they're only $29. Right.
Oh, really? What?
Yeah,
so
I know.
Affordable.
For Apple, I was expecting twice that price.
Don't undersell yourself, Apple.
And you can replace the battery in them.
Oh.
Which is not a very Apple thing either. So
no, it certainly is not. Wow. Apple's really changing its brand with AirTags. Yeah. Oh, nice. All right.
Just a quick roundup of some Apple things for the Apple-y people who listen to our podcast.
Apple-y. All right. Well, let's move it along. All right. So up next, served to you piping hot. As always, super weird when I say it, when the main course is Joe Dale. We're so happy that you're here, served piping hot.
It's lovely to be here. I always like to be served piping hot, I must say.
It's the only way to be served, right?
Exactly.
We were laughing before we came on that it's odd how I'm the only, I have the Midwestern accent and I'm a little out of place. American podcast, and here I am with the Midwestern accent, and no one comes for the Midwestern accent, right? So, Joe, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit, as Wiley always asks, who is Joe Dale? Where are you coming from?
Okay, well, first of all, I'd really like to thank you for letting me come onto the podcast. I'm a big fan, have been right from the word go, and I love the audio quality that you have in the podcast, which I know you take a lot of time and expertise creating that. So it's absolutely lovely as a fellow podcaster to be on your podcast. So who is Joe Dale? That's a question, right? So I'm a former languages teacher. I taught French for 13 years, 3 years at secondary school level, and then 10 years at middle school level on the Isle of Wight, which is a very, very sunny normally. So coming in, well, not exactly coming in piping up right now because it's now 8 o'clock in the evening. But during the day, it's obviously piping hot the whole time. It's lovely. Mm-hmm. And for the last 10 years or so, I've been an independent languages consultant, and I normally travel around the world doing training and speaking at conferences here, there, and everywhere. I've been to North America, for example. I've been to Australia and New Zealand and the Middle East and all over Europe and so on and so forth. And of course, since the pandemic, I've had to do all my work via webinars, as well as a bit of podcast editing as well. I've been recently commissioned to edit a podcast, and I'm in discussion at the moment about editing another podcast, which I'm very excited about because it just makes a bit of a difference from all the constant preparation for webinars. But that's a little bit about me anyway. And I'm also, according to The Guardian, the man behind the MFL Twitterati, which I'm sure we'll come on and speak more about later on as well.
Well, you're clearly much more interesting than we are. You win. Big star. Gold star by your name today.
Thank you.
So, Joe, every teacher takes their path and ends up specializing in the content area that they specialize in. How did you end up in the foreign language arena?
Well, I suppose when I was at school, languages as well as maths were sort of the subjects I was best at. And so I'm a big believer in going for the things which you're naturally good at. And so, yeah, that's what I did my exams in. That's what I did for my degree. I did French and linguistics because I've always been interested in languages. I don't know where that came from exactly. I mean, both my parents can speak languages, and one of my brothers speaks languages as well. So I think that's probably where it came from. But it was just that I was naturally good at learning languages, and I think I've naturally got a good memory. And so that really helped. And then from there, when I had the opportunity as part of my degree to have a year in France, that's when it really, really, really took off, I think. I was lucky enough to be a student at a university in the south of France, in Montpellier, and had an amazing time speaking French in various coffee shops and not necessarily going to the lectures that I was supposed to be going to. But I thought, well, what's the point being in a lecture with, say, 60 people and not saying anything compared to being in a cafe with French people speaking in French? So that's what I decided to do. And then I finished my degree, and then I had 2 years in French-speaking Canada, in Quebec, and I was an assistant there. And that's where I got a taste for teaching, which is one reason I wanted to do that. Having sort of come from a family of teachers, I thought it would be a good idea to learn the ropes a little bit and get a taste for what it was like. And then so I did that. I had an amazing time, came back, did my teacher training, and then, yeah, the rest is history, really.
How many languages do you speak, Joe?
Right. So I taught French for 13 years, but I also learned Spanish as a child as well, which I went up to A level, which stands for advanced level. So I did 6 years of Spanish at school. But I've never taught Spanish, and I haven't practiced my Spanish much at all I won't say how many years, but 1 or 2 years. But I have been to Spain a few times in the last few years, and I've always enjoyed trying to work out what people are saying and having, I can still, have basic conversations with people. But those are my main languages. I don't have any German at all. I don't have any Mandarin Chinese, but my French is still pretty good, I must say.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know I've said this to Mindy before, I think, but here in the United States, Spanish is like the second language or the first foreign language that you learn, but in the UK it's usually French. And given the geography, I remember growing up, we used to go to France for our summer holidays quite a lot. So in Brittany, northern France, for sure. So I have fond memories of that and of learning French, and I did some German at not at A level. This was a long time ago. Maybe you'll know this.
At Highers, was it?
Highers.
Highers,
it was my higher
maybe?
grades. Yeah, I did higher grade German. So yeah.
So what was that like? What was it like learning languages in Scotland at the time?
I mean, it was probably different to what it is now. It was a lot of memorization, and I don't know if I fully had a grasp of like the structures of the language, but every so often I think my school would have these students, like exchange students, that would come across, and they would talk to us and help us out with some things, because you would learn language by the book, but how people actually talk it and speak the language is a little bit different sometimes, a bit more colloquial sometimes, and so we would pick up that a little bit more from our French student and things like that too.
Awesome. I mean, one of the things which really hit me when I first heard your fantastic podcast is the fact that, of course, right, Jonathan's from Scotland. I had no idea, because we've been following each other for I don't know how many years, quite a few years certainly, and I've been bookmarking all these different blog posts that you've been writing about EdTech and what have you. And then, of course, I heard your voice. I thought, right, you're from the United Kingdom. It was really funny. So
it is really
as
funny,
I said, it's lovely to be on here. And I love the rapport that you have between the two of you as well. It's absolutely fantastic. Brilliant.
There's a lot of times I look at him, I'm like, does that make sense to you? Do you know what that means? And he's like, no, can you give me just a little bit of a background knowledge? And a lot of times it's just cultural references, right? Like things that happened when I was a kid that he wouldn't necessarily, have experienced. So we do often joke about that. So you guys have been following each other on Twitter for a very long time. I'm imagining that the connection between the two of you is EdTech, right? So what are some really interesting EdTech tools, Joe, that you find really intriguing or you feel like are going to shift education? Are there things that you're really excited about that, you'd want to share?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so the main thing I've been doing for many, many years is like Jonathan as well, constantly searching for, the latest EdTech tool that could be useful for language teachers. So I'm always looking through Twitter and through blog posts with a language teacher lens, as it were. And I would say that during the pandemic in particular, the sorts of tools which have proved really popular are things such as Whiteboard.fi, which has gone down a storm amongst teachers in the way that they can just simply replicate the sorts of activities they were doing in the classroom face-to-face with mini whiteboards, but just use the digital equivalent. That's a really popular one, I think. Another one which has proved really popular, which maybe is not as well known, is Spiral.ac, which I only heard about back in November last year. So we have this event normally in London, face-to-face in London in Olympia, called the Language Show. And it's normally the biggest event of the year. And you get about, 7,000-8,000 people that go to it. And of course, November last year, it was online for obvious reasons. And we have this show and tell event, which we always have every year. But of course, as I said, it was online. And there was a teacher there from the Middle East who's from the UK originally, but she's teaching in the Middle East, called Laura Causer, that's Causser. And she introduced us to Spiral.ac, which you'd not heard of before. And for those people who haven't heard of it, you get a number of different activity types that you can get with the tool. And the one that proved the most popular is called Quickfire Lite. And essentially what it allows you to do is it allows you to create a question. So you say the question out loud over Zoom or whatever you're using, or I suppose you could use it in a hybrid context as well. And then the students then all write their answers down on their own individual whiteboard. But as opposed to Whiteboard.fi, which allows you to draw and to add pictures, it only allows you to add text. But the feature that people seem to there's a few features that people really like. One is the hide names option. So it means that the children are not comparing their work with someone else's work, but also they have the correct and the improve button. So if the teacher clicks correct, anyone who's got the same answer, it'll be marked as correct. And if they click improve, it means that the student that has had their improve button clicked, they can then improve their answer because their whiteboard then goes back into edit mode. And so people have really liked that, particularly those people who like the idea of, retrieval practice. There's a lot of interest in an evidence-based approach, certainly in language teaching in the UK at the moment. And so this idea of retrieval practice and drawing on what the students have done in previous lessons, and as a sort of a reminder of they've made a mistake, but the teacher's not telling them what the mistake is. They have to work it out for themselves. That's really good for retrieval practice. So those are a couple of tools. I mean, for speaking, Flipgrid is an obvious one. We've been doing a lot of presentations around Flipgrid. Also a new one, which I'm not sure if you've heard of, called Qwiqr, which is Qwiqr. So it's like Flipgrid, but it's audio only. It was developed by a physics teacher in the southwest of England. So made by an educator, which is always good news, I think, in lots of ways. And so what happens is, well, there's two ways of using it. There's the what's called Qwiqr conversation, and then just standard Qwiqr feedback. So the Qwiqr feedback option is when you record one piece of audio and you can automatically align it to a QR code. So you can print out a PDF of QR codes. You can then record audio for an individual QR code. So then you can then print it out, cut up the QR codes and put them into, say, exercise books or jotters, as you say in Scotland, and then put them on a wall display maybe. But in a COVID-safe environment, that's not really a good idea. So I would recommend using the Qwiqr Conversations option, which if you click on that, what you can do is you record your audio. You can also add an image, some text and a web link if you want to as well, all for free. And then you then post that. It creates a page. You can share the link of that page in, say, the chat in a Zoom call or a Teams call or what have you. Then all the students have to do is click on that link and they can record their answers. So in other words, you as the teacher could record some audio, maybe introducing a topic or maybe doing the first line of a conversation, share that link with an individual student so they could then record a back and forth conversation for, say, exam role play practice, that sort of thing. Or you could share a link with a group of students in a breakout room and they could all give a summary of what they've been talking about, those sorts of ideas. And it's free. And the audio is deleted after, I think, 3 months, but you can always right-click any of the players that appear automatically and download the audio as well. You can also moderate the audio as well, which is brilliant. So it means that when the students are posting their answers onto the screen, the teacher sees approve or delete, so they can listen to everything before the other children can hear what the other students have done. And if the teacher decides that he or she doesn't want the students to hear the audio, then they can just leave it as it is and not click either approve or delete. But the fact you can moderate it is great. And there's also the last option is you can click on lock conversation, and that means that nobody else can then post to that URL. So it's a really, really slick tool. And I've been trying to sort of talk about it in lots of different presentations. So I think it's fantastic for languages for sure, but you could use it in other subjects as well. But I think for languages, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I really love hearing examples like that, because I think one of the hardest things for like Mindy and I when we go into schools to work with teachers is that, you know, you get a whole group of teachers at once, and they teach math and science and ELA and all the different curricular subjects. And, you know, we were both elementary teachers by trade, and we pick up things in other places. But, you know, I think that's one of the reasons why I like following people like yourself, because I get to see examples of what, you know, other teachers are doing. And, you know, sometimes it's hard to find examples for the PE teacher or the, you know, the foreign language teacher or the art teacher using technology. And, you know, you can think of easy ones for math and language and things like that sometimes. But yeah, just to get a good rounded education of everything that's going on out there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think also on that point, I think, you know, being part of a social media network or community, and obviously there are, you know, different ones for different subjects, but certainly languages, there's the MFL Twitterati, which I've helped to set up, and then the equivalent of in the US of LangChat. But being able to, say, search for the hashtag MFL Twitterati plus a keyword, such as, for example, Qwiqr or Flipgrid or something around, say, a skill like speaking or listening or what have you, then that's a really nice way of being able to get to the good stuff, or the nuggets, to refer to the show, that you can find, in no time at all. If you were to do a 10-minute search for the hashtag plus a keyword, I'm sure that you would find some fantastic nuggets in that time. So that's why I think that hashtags for following threaded conversations, or for finding your tribe, as it were, to use an expression, is really, really valuable. And that's one reason why I've spent so much time in the last 10 years or so trying to build that community. But thank goodness we have that now in the pandemic, because it's been amazing the way in which people have shared ideas on a daily basis. Shared Padlets or Wakelets, which is another really popular tool at the moment amongst the MFL Twitterati, and then different people have been appearing on podcasts and lots and lots of different webinars and so on and so forth. So it's been a fantastic coming together. That's been one of the silver linings of this whole situation, I think.
Well, I noticed that, the tools that you shared, something that was missing from there would have been things that I thought you may have mentioned, which have been like Google Translate or the Microsoft Translator. And Jonathan and I share those things because we're like, oh, that one's an easy one for us. But I'm now, having an expert to talk to. Is there a role for those types of translation tools, or how do you see them being used and with teachers and students that are learning foreign languages? Are we providing the wrong advice for people?
Well, I think Google Translate, etc., are they're double-edged swords. On the one hand, they could be seen as a menace and a pain from the point of view that if a student doesn't want to do their homework and thinks that they'll just put it through Google Translate. And
right, that would have been me. I'm raising my virtual hand. That was me.
For the benefit of the Zoom call, Mindy is putting her hand in the air. Mindy is putting her hand in the air. So some students they think that the teacher will never know that they put their work through Google Translate, but of course, the teacher can see that immediately and wonder why in their first year that the student is using the past historic, for example, or whatever it might be. So I think on the one hand, it's and because Google Translate is getting better and better all the time, then if you're talking about sort of simple structures, it would be more or less impossible for the teacher to know whether the student has used Google Translate. If you're talking about language which is much more detailed, then it's much easier for the teacher to see that the student has used Google Translate. If the level of the output that's been produced is far higher than what the teacher is used to seeing from the student, then it's obvious. And then the issue is, how does the teacher deal with that? Does the teacher have a polite conversation with the student? Does the teacher say, well, could you translate? Can you tell me what this means? This work you've submitted? And of course, things will unravel pretty quickly if they've used Google Translate. Yeah. So I think those sorts of things. But then you can also have the situation whereby, the parents might be very defensive of the child, which can happen for sure. And then the parents might say, yes, of course it's their own work. Of course, how dare you imply that they're using Google Translate? And then one has to have that professional conversation around that. So I think it can be a real thorn in the side of teachers, language teachers in particular. And I certainly know there are some teachers who won't set written homework because of the fear or the annoyance of some students. I'm not trying to tar every student, of course, with this, but some students thinking, oh, well, they'll just put it through Google Translate and the teacher won't know, or they don't care, or what have you. But on the other hand, on a more positive note, I think Google Translate or translation tools in general can be very good for things like identifying how idioms work, for example. So you might have an idiom in English, and to translate it word by word, it wouldn't work in the target language. You have to find the equivalent, and I think that's really fascinating and interesting. But maybe for students that have had a bit more time to learn a bit more of the language. But I think that I certainly think that Google Translate and such like can be used in a positive way. But I would imagine the way that most students are using it is to try and get their homework finished without having to think about it. And then, of course, the teacher then has to go through the steps that I've talked about already. So it's a pain, but it's also can be a very positive thing as well, I think.
I think it's one of those things sometimes like, if a student copy and pasted a paragraph out of Wikipedia, you could probably pretty quickly notice that that's not their natural tone or thing like that too. So I'm sure it's probably similar for language teachers, and not everything like translates all that well sometimes. Like, you could put in what you wanted to say and give it to Google, but that's not necessarily the best translation or how you would say it or what you're being asked to translate it as. I mean, I watched an interesting YouTube video just the other day, and it was about how Shakespeare, the works of Shakespeare, doesn't translate very well in French because he uses iambic pentameter, which emphasizes every second syllable or something, and then in French you emphasize the last syllable, and so you don't get that lyrical kind of beat that goes along with it too. So yeah, just that stuff kind of fascinates me for sure.
Absolutely. And just another little trick I just thought of as well. A friend of mine, Vincent Everett, who is a head of languages in England, in Norfolk, what he does is he gives the students a text, but he puts in, I think, say one word or a couple of words, but he makes them very, very small. And then he makes them the same color as the background, so they appear invisible.
Right.
So it could be, I don't know the words he uses. Let's say penguin, right? So then the students will then translate that text. He can then change the color of the text so it's the same, or if they've done it automatically, and then he can see that word like penguin, as it were, and immediately know that they've used Google Translate, which I thought was quite a cool idea.
That is a good idea. So I think that with the Google Translate, I've had this question, and so I'm going to ask it from you. I have teachers who use that type of tool to communicate with families that, English is not their primary language, or they may have no English whatsoever. And so I've often been asked, how successful is that translation? So would you say if one of the things we should definitely recognize is like slang or idioms or, just those little tweaks in language, but would you say that is a great tool to use, or is there something better that would help with the translation to different languages if teachers are trying to communicate with families at home?
I think with any translation, you get a good, gist of what someone is saying. As I said, I think Google Translate, for example, is getting better and better and better. So if you're talking about like individual sort of sentences, it will probably do a really good job in translating it perfectly. If you're talking about, much, much longer bits of text, then there might be, cultural differences. There might be, as Jonathan was saying, differences in tone, et cetera, But I think that a speaker of the different language can get a gist of what the text is about. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but they can get a good gist of what it's about. And there might be some inaccuracies or misunderstandings because Google Translate has translated, the incorrect word, as it were. But I think out of all the options out there, I think that Google Translate and Microsoft Translator are probably the best options, I would say. There are other ones as well, but I think I think the example you've just given is really, really, really good use of Google Translate in order to help. Let's say if you have parents of students who don't speak English who want to get the gist of their students' work, or maybe a report or that sort of thing. I think that could be a really useful tool. But I think we're not quite there yet with simultaneous perfect translation using Google Translate or so on and so forth. But who knows in 5 years' time?
Yeah, right.
So with great power comes great responsibility, yeah?
Absolutely.
So Joe, you've been working hard during the pandemic here. Why don't you tell us about these webinars you've been creating?
I'd love to. So back in March of last year, when the pandemic struck and we went into our first lockdown, literally within a few days, myself and my friend Helen Myers, who's the chair of the London branch of the Association for Language Learning, we essentially both came up with the same idea, which was to create a series of webinars under the TILT series. So TILT stands for Technology and Language Teaching. And Helen had been doing webinars for many, many years. I think she started about 2011, but she was doing them, I think I'm right in saying, about once every 6 months. Whereas we decided we were going to do them like 2 a week. And then in Easter of 2020, we were doing 3 a week because there was such a need.
At any point, did you think, what have we done? Holy cow. This is a lot. Good for you.
Not
that
really.
Sounds like a lot of work. God bless you.
It was a lot of work. It has been a huge amount of work, and it hasn't stopped yet. But I just, morally, I felt it was the right thing to do. So essentially what we did was, it was very much a team effort. Helen did all the web pages and setting up the Zoom account and everything. So we have a pro Zoom account with up to 500 people, and we have had some sessions when we had like 300 people watching live, and we stream it on YouTube as well. But what my main role was being like the digital scout, as it were, and to harness my professional learning network. And as I've sort of said already, I've been interested in this sort of area for many years, and so I was able to contact people from literally all over the world. And so we've had speakers from the States. We had quite a few people from the States. We had people from Australia, from the Middle East, from Europe, and so on and so forth. And I tried to make them very, very organized, the series, by starting off with platforms. So we started off with a couple of teachers talking about using the Google platform and different ways in which they were organizing hybrid teaching, as it was at the time, that they were doing there, because there was one person in Abu Dhabi, one person in Hanoi. And then we went into looking at using Microsoft, so things like sort of Class Notebook, Microsoft Teams, setting up assignments, and the things which we knew that people really wanted to know the nuts and bolts for, because as we know, it was like we went into emergency remote teaching, and there were lots of people who were really, really scared and terrified, I'd have thought, and felt very, very anxious about being, thrown in at the deep end. And that's why, as I said, morally, I felt it was the right thing to do, to not start charging people for X amount per webinar and what have you, but just offer it all for free, so that not only people would benefit from all this free professional development, but also it would harness the community, the MFL Twitterati community, and it would give something really positive to get our teeth into, I think, during all the grimness. And then from there, we got a bit more, I suppose, creative, and we had webinars around escape rooms and virtual adventures and Bitmoji classrooms. And then also in January of this year, we decided, instead of just repeating ourselves, we decided to have sort of like clinic workshop type sessions, which again, I think was my idea, which was essentially we'd have like a couple of speakers presenting, say, the basics again of setting up Class Notebook, but then encouraging people to ask questions, and maybe they would share their screens and say, I've got this particular issue around whatever it might be. And normally it was because they hadn't got the latest version. It was normally a question of them having to update the latest version. But just being able to ask questions like, okay, so are you using the app version? Are you using the web-based version of Teams, whatever it might be, or OneNote or what have you? And then and do that as well. But we're carrying on doing them, but we're doing on average about one a week at the moment. We've actually got Wes Fryer, who I'm really, really delighted about, who's coming up on Saturday. And he's going to, because he's not a language teacher, but he had the opportunity of teaching a bit of Spanish recently, so I noticed this on Twitter. So I got in contact with him thinking he's never going to say yes. But I said, I don't suppose you could present for us for about an hour about using Minecraft and Scratch, but in a language teaching context. And he said yes, bless him. So I was really, really delighted.
He's a great guy.
So it's been a real creative journey.
And it can be a challenging thing to do. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but Mindy and I have had similar calls from people over the last year, and it's not like we know the answers always all the time. It's not like we've had experience of doing this before. Like you said, we all just got dropped into it, and a lot of the time it's just okay, well here's what I would do. Here's the approach I would take, and go from there. And hopefully that helps people, and I'm sure your webinars do the same.
Yeah, well, originally, it was like back in March, it was like I looked at my diary and everything I had in my diary for like the next 6 months was suddenly wiped out, essentially. And obviously I was able to persuade a few people who I was supposed to be going to visit face-to-face, including I was supposed to be going to Italy at the end of March 2020, which was it was not the best place to go at the time, considering. No. But I was able to persuade them to let me do a series of webinars. And then from there, it sort of grew and grew and grew, and suddenly I was a bit too busy, to be honest with you, and I was working a bit too hard. But which I'm not complaining about. It's good, and I've really wanted to help people, and I'm bending over backwards, trying to answer everyone's messages on Twitter and so on and so forth. But of course, at the same time, I have to make a living, and I'm doing okay from that point of view. So it's just trying to get that balance really of doing the right thing, as it were, but also doing what I need to do to pay the mortgage and so on and so forth.
Well, maybe on that note then, if you are looking for more emails or direct messages and tweets and things like that, how can people find these amazing webinars or get in touch with you and ask them all their modern language questions?
Okay, so the best place to get me really is on Twitter, I would say. So I'm just at Joe Dale on Twitter. Very, very easy. So I signed up in 2007, so it meant I was able to use my full name as opposed to using my name plus a few numbers or what have you, and also because of the fact I've been on Twitter for whatever it's been now, 14 years or so, coming up to 14 years. It's meant that I've been able to make all these fantastic connections with people, and so that's a good place to start. I also have a podcast as well, which is mfltwitterati.podcast.com, for which we did 10 episodes. I'm desperate to do some more episodes, but I've been a little bit busy for the last year and a bit, so it's sort of a bit in hiatus at the moment. But I would love to get that going again. And everybody's welcome to come along to the webinars. We normally have them at 8 o'clock BST, so British Summer Time, in the evening UK time. So that would be sort of middle afternoon in the US, depending where you are. And sometimes we have them at 3:30 in the afternoon to 4:30 on a Saturday. So that's say people in the States or whoever it might be, whoever can't do an evening slot on a Thursday can come along then. And a couple of them, when we've had people from Australia, they've been sort of like 10 o'clock in the morning. So everybody's welcome, and the recordings are all posted on my YouTube channel, so you can catch up with them then. And I would really encourage people to look at those video recordings, because they really are some of the I would say the cream of the crop, the cream of language teachers interested in technology in the whole world. And most people who I could think of who I know are interested in language technology, I've asked, and there are other people who I'm still planning on asking. But I would say nearly everybody. I can't think of someone who said no when I asked them. And I'm very persistent as well. There were some people I was chasing for quite a few months, let's say, but they said yes. Eventually said, as long as you stop contacting me, Joe. I'll say yes.
Whatever it takes.
I'll do the webinar. It's okay. Just stop calling me. No. But there we are. Yeah.
Perfect.
Needs must.
All right. So on to my favorite part of the show. Up next is Tech Nuggets. And Joe's sticking around for Tech Nuggets, right, Joe?
Definitely. I've got a couple of tech nuggets I can mention myself if that's allowed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody gets a couple of tech nuggets.
Who wants to go first?
I will go first then.
Okay.
And I'm going to start with one that we had recently here. We had a virtual conference here in Iowa just last week for iTech, and we've had some guests on here. We had Jen Giffen and Eric Kurtz on here talking about that. One of the sessions I went to was from my colleague in another part of the state, Seth Denny, and he did an interesting thing here where he took the computer science standards that we are all beginning to wrestle with here in Iowa and crosswalked them with the social studies standards and showed where the comparisons and connections were. So it's just on a spreadsheet, and I'll put a link to this in the show notes, but he shows how, for instance, you would say things like the social studies standard might be compare life in the past to life today with different communities and cultural groups, including indigenous communities. And then there's a computer science standard that says compare how people live and work before and after the implementation and adoption of new computer technologies. So this is a first grade standard for like 6-year-olds. And I just thought it was a really interesting way. We're looking at ways to try and, not have teachers reinvent the wheel and have to think about completely brand new ways of incorporating some of these computer science standards, but just looking at ways where we can make it, seamless and have some natural connections. So I really appreciate that, and I look forward to Seth doing math and literacy and art and PE. He's not doing all those, but
poor Seth.
yeah, he's a social studies specialist, so he loves the computer science, so it was a natural fit for him.
So I actually have an instructional strategy called Pile of Words that Dr. Catlin Tucker just shared on a blog post like this week. I think it's fairly new. I don't think the instructional strategy is new, but sometimes it's just nice to have those things kind of brought to your attention again. So the way this instructional strategy works is that the teacher creates kind of a list of vocabulary words, and we know how important vocabulary is for students, and they say that that's one thing that we are really lacking in instruction is with vocabulary. So the teacher kind of compiles, depending on student grade level, 15 to 20 vocabulary words, maybe somewhere in there. And then it's kind of a collaborative activity too. So students get together and they look at the vocabulary words and try and figure out if they have a group definition for that vocabulary word. And then they start to sort those vocabulary words into categories. So there's lots of different grade skills involved in that. And then kind of as a culminating activity, they make predictions about what the next section of learning is going to be about by looking at those different categories of words. So the reason I think that this is an interesting instructional strategy is that we're still trying to find strong instructional strategies that we know are powerful in ways that we can use digital tools with those instructional strategies if we need to. And I think that with vocabulary words and doing sorting, I really feel like that's a hands-on activity, but that pile of words can't just go with every single student that was working with them. So a digital tool like Jamboard or even Google Slides, something like that, would allow for students to be able to take that pile of words with them as a collaborative activity. So they could still look back at those definitions of those words or the categorizations of those and use it as a study guide later or as a refresher later or tie-ins for later. And so I was really appreciative of Catlin's blog post kind of bringing that back to the forefront. And also she has a couple templates that you can use. There is one way at the bottom of the template that is a way for you then to take those words and use them, I think, throughout. I should have looked at this section probably a little bit more carefully, but she's always very good about providing templates then with her ideas. So also, if you don't follow her or get her blog posts, you definitely should, because she's got all kinds of great blended and personalized learning ideas. So that's mine.
I have a feeling that Joe could put a nice little foreign language spin on that one with all those vocabulary words. So, yeah.
I could actually. That my tech nugget. I can't believe I'm on your podcast talking about a tech nugget. I'm really flattered. Anyway, yeah, my tech nugget, which I think leads itself nicely on from what you've just said in relation to Jamboard, although you could use this idea with Google Slides or PowerPoint or what have you, is the following free web tool called gifcap.dev. Have you heard of it?
No.
I don't think so.
No, it's really cool. So
okay.
It's gifcap.dev. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to share your screen, and anything that you record on the screen, it turns into an animated GIF. So, for example, in Jamboard, you could create your different Post-it notes. Say in a languages context, you could create your Post-it notes for, say, different words or chunks. Record your screen while you're moving the chunks into the correct order, as it were. And then once you've done that, once it's finished capturing, you just go back to gifcap.dev and click stop recording. And then what you can do is you can put your cursor, which is becomes a cross, and you can then drag it over the section that you want to keep, and everything else is deleted. So in other words, in, say, Jamboard, you just drag over the white section, or you could do the same with PowerPoint or Google Slides. So you wouldn't know which tool you're using unless, of course, you recognize the format of the Post-it note. But I just think that's really lovely. And then you can also, like with Flipgrid, you can remove the bit at the beginning and the bit at the end. You can't edit the bit in the middle, but you can top and tail, and then you click render, and then you can download the GIF. So then, having done that, you could then, for example, upload that back into Jamboard as a background, so the students can't move it around. It will just be a model, and then you could ask them to do the same, showing other examples of word order using an animated GIF. that's one idea. And then you can also use it, for example, for showing very simple EdTech techniques. So, for example, I've shown people how to change the language of the Bitmoji Chrome extension so that all the Bitmojis that appear with text can be changed from, say, English to French really easily. Which, if you don't know how to do,
you could do that.
You go to the three dots. You click the three dots top right in Chrome. You click Settings. You click Advanced. You then go to Languages, and then you click Add Language. You choose the language that you want to add. And then you click on the three dots to the right of that language once you've added it, and it says go to top or send to top. I think it's go to top or move to top, I think it is. So you need to click move to top, and once it's on the top, when you then open up Bitmoji Chrome extension again, all the Bitmojis with the text are now in that language. And then from there, you can then right-click one, save target as, or drag and drop it into your Google Slides presentation or what have you. So I've actually made a GIF or GIF for that.
No! Don't you bring that in here?
So is it gifcap.dev or gifcap? It's quite difficult to say that. It's gifcap.dev
right.
anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's another way of making nice little GIFs for EdTech ideas. I know that Jake Miller's a big fan of doing those sorts of things as well. So I think that the quality of the final GIF or GIF is really good quality as well. It's not pixelated at all. It's really, really nice. And then from there, you can then embed it into Padlet or PowerPoint or wherever accepts GIFs. So it's a really, really nice one, I think. There we are.
Good one.
2 for the price of 1 there, Joe.
Yeah.
we got changing the foreign language and Bitmoji Chrome extensions. And then
now I can call people names in different languages.
Oh, is that where you're going with that? Is that where your mind went, Mindy?
Well, of course it is. Of course it is. Please.
All right, my second nugget. And, I feel like there must be some kind of divine providence here or something, because, Mindy, you came up with that idea of sorting words around and grouping them up together. Well, my other tech nugget is called CirclyApp, which I came across recently, and it's one of those ones I don't know, I look at it, and sometimes I look at nuggets and I think, that's really cool, but I'm not sure what I'd use it for. And then sometimes I think, well, that's absolutely genius. And I'm somewhere in between with this one. So, but now I saw your instructional strategy, I think it would be perfect for that. So it's a visual organizer where you can group together different ideas into these kind of like graphic organizer type of tools. So Jamboard would be one way to do that with those post-it notes. Sure. But this is another option that you could explore that came out. I don't know when it came out. It came out recently. It just came on my radar recently. And it lets you create these virtual circles for different ideas. So you could sort vocabulary. You could, group like and unlike things. You could put, chemicals from a periodic table together that are grouped by gases and all the different types of things like that. So yeah, I like that. I'm looking forward to just thinking about different ways that that could be used, but it seems to be 100% free right now. So it is CirclyApp.com.
I just saw that today too, and then saw you had it on the dock, and I was like, okay, I'll keep looking for different techniques. So the one that I found, which is also a bit like this, is GitMind, which is a mind mapping tool, so kind of concept mapping. The thing that I find with concept mapping tools, it seems, is that you only get so far with a free concept mapping tool before you either have to pay or you only get like very minimal opportunities within that mind map. So this one is brand new to me, and it's supposed to be completely free. So you should get all of the same exact features within a free account. There is a paid account. You just can't, with the paid account, you get more exports for free. So, but the nice thing about it is that you still have all of those same tools. And I really like concept mapping. And I think that a lot of times we provide concept maps for our students to just fill in, and we don't give them enough opportunity to create their own connections and find different ways to provide visual representations of their thinking. And so the fact that this one has all of those capabilities inside of it, there's lots of templates. But it allows students to choose then which one they want, and they're not limited to the ones that we can only provide, with the free tool. So, Git as in GIT, so poorly, that's the Midwestern accent right there, GitMind. Might be one worth looking at if you're into concept mapping.
I like that one.
Awesome. Can I do one final tech nugget? Is that a possibility? Hey. So, I'm a big fan of Remove.bg. Do you know that one?
Yes.
Yeah. So Remove.bg, for those people that haven't heard of it before, is great for uploading a picture of either it can be a human being or a group of human beings, and it just removes the background automatically, or it can be a single shape as well, or object with let's say if you've got a nice sort of consistent color background, it will remove that as well, and then you can then superimpose that in front of another image. So one thing I like to do on my training is showing, for example, say a website like photosforclass.com, which is really nice for royalty-free images, which give the attribution automatically in the bottom of the picture, which is really cool. And then you can then put that into, say, Google Slides or Book Creator or PowerPoint, and then you can then take a picture, put it onto Remove.bg, and then drag and drop it onto the background image. So as a result of that, you could have the students appearing in front of the Eiffel Tower or in front of a French cafe or what have you. And then you could also put in speech bubbles with embedded audio. In, say, Google Slides, you could use the Moat Chrome extension for adding audio really nicely as well. That's one idea. And then from the same company, there's unscreen.com, which I'm a big fan of Esther Park, who's doing a Tilt webinar for us actually in July. And one thing that she really inspired me about was she uploaded her video into unscreen.com, and it removes the background as well. And then she put that into, I think it was into Google Slides, and made that into an animated GIF. There was another web tool which allowed her to cut out a circle as a GIF, which off the top of my head I forget right now. But it was very effective. And so I then went through and went step by step on how to do that myself, which is, I've tweeted about it. It's on my Twitter account, but I put it into a slide with me sort of, doing this sort of thing as an animated GIF. For the benefit of the audio, I'm putting my thumbs, up in a celebratory gesture. And then a few other people on Twitter then replicated the same idea, including Meredith White, who's a Spanish teacher from the States, who's amazing, who did another one. And so I think Unscreen and Remove.bg are two really cool tools for making simple creative effects, which can be really nice with the stars, as it were, the people in those animated GIFs or those images being the actors in their scenes, as it were. And I think that anything which is personalized in that way is something which is going to motivate young people, I think, for sure.
Well, Joe, you are a gentleman and a scholar. We are very much appreciative of your company today. We'll put links to everything you talked about in the show, but thank you for coming on and talking to us today.
No, you're welcome. It's an absolute pleasure. It's been an honor. I'm really, really flattered that you said yes when I approached you about this, and it's been a real pleasure. So thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been lovely.
So that's everything we have for this week. Until next time.
This has been the EdTech Takeout. We hope it hit the spot.
For more information on today's episode, please visit dlgwaea.org/podcast.